This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 131. Which one of the three business personas are you? Are you a real estate agent with an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to turn your job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle? But you can't seem to find the right plan or any plan to help you get there? Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action, if you're that type, you want to take some immediate action to get started in the right direction if you're new to the business, and if you are a top producer and you finally want to stop chasing this business on muscle and get strategically planned out, I've created a free strategic plan for you that's waiting over at freeagentgift.com. Now, I'm not telling you it's all of the secrets of the Realty Classroom and how we do what we do, but it is a challenge to what to do in the order that you put that in. And I wish someone had kicked me in the tail and gave me a plan like that to think about this 21 years ago when I started. It would have been very helpful and saved me a lot of pain. So freeagentgift.com, get your copy. All right. In this episode, I want to cover this. This came up, I was listening to this audiobook over the last couple of weeks while I was walking. And sometimes when you're listening to an audiobook, something just strikes you. And I walk around, obviously, with my smartphone, and I popped up in notes, and I just put this down there. And I captured it so I could bring it back. In Michael Gerber's work, which I talk about a lot here, in fact, when you go to freeagentgift.com, you'll see that infographic. Gerber has talked about this in his body of work forever, that there's this entrepreneur, a manager, and a technician. Well, in this book that I was listening to as well, something similar, that concept of threes came up, these three personas. And so the first point here is, and I'll ask in the form of a question, are you a starter, an operator, or a scaler? So for me, it was very timely. And by the way, the book is called The Nuclear Effect. It was more about just starting an online business because the Realty Classroom, very largely so, is an online business. And I was trying to learn more. And what the book ended up being about was a lot of general, important business mindset stuff. And once you go by, which is I'm a huge fan of, if you know anything about me, we are the business. Our business is a reflection of the way we think. But in this case, by asking this question, starter, operator, or scaler, he was making you think about, well, what are you naturally? And whatever your strength is, that's probably what your business looks like right now. And again, especially for you top producers like me, where you're trying to say, okay, how do I get to even another level? I mean, since the digital age and the recession, I decided to rip my business apart from the ground up and build it what I hoped was the right way. And I've had some really good success recently with a lot of that. But I'm at this next level, and I have to challenge myself. And so when I look at these three things and I think about that entrepreneur starter type, I'm a starter. I can start things left and right because I have this real incredibly deep desire to be a business creative. I've always loved business. I've always loved the creative side of it. So I guess that defines me as a natural entrepreneur. I couldn't figure out early on in my business career why I just didn't like walking into the corporate front door. There were so many things about business I liked. I was headed towards a Wall Street career, going back to business school, et cetera, all these things, right? Doesn't matter about me deeply in my history. But I now recognize looking back, oh my gosh, the guy's just a creative starter. He's an entrepreneur. But there was no internet that I could dream into and, look at. And back then it was, you got in a lane and what are you, nuts? There's something wrong with you if you don't stay in that lane. Well, I was just a starter. That's all I was. I just wished I knew where all the starters and the entrepreneurs were hanging out and I would have seen my tribe. So I know that. But over time, I recognize as an independent contractor, and through Gerber's work and my mentor introducing me to that management was everything. I mean, here you are talking about an MBA, right? A master's in business administration. Well, administration, unpeel that layer of the onion, it's management, it's systems. These are all the things that, whether they're big businesses or small businesses, and I saw that when I was working for a Wall Street based company, working for an analyst. I saw that when we would analyze these companies, the best one had systems. They had great managers, people that were on top of things, and I would marvel because my brain being naturally a starter creative, I would marvel at the people who had the patience and the wherewithal to create these just microeconomic systems where my brain as a creative would melt down. And a lot of entrepreneurial people. I mean, I coach a lot of top producers. In fact, my ideal avatar or client for my highest level coaching, and I can only take so many of those at a time, most of them have been with me for a long time, they are also like me trying to battle into this management system idea. And so what I discovered and then subsequently shared with them is the power of mind mapping. Is that as a starter and a hustler and a grinder, which by the way, is all those words are way overrated. Way over it. I had this conversation with a new mentor of mine in the online space, and he was saying how he had pushed back on that. Hey, that hustle, that grind. I think that's admirable, and I love work ethic. I love people that work hard. But if you don't have an operator's brain being developed, a lot of that energy, that hustle, that grind can be dissipated, and you can end up with you can end up not having what you really wanted, which is a business. Because it requires operation. A good business does require operation. It requires operators. It requires managers. And so I found the act to become that one myself, right? I found the act of mind mapping and Michael Gerber's idea of how to look at this really important. So I have morphed myself also into an operator. But I would tell you, naturally, I don't wake up every day saying, I can't wait to manage the heck out of my business. I really enjoy it now because it's giving me more of what I want, which is a self-sustaining, predictable business that doesn't require always Danny to be the technician. Okay. So I am a natural starter entrepreneur. I have created my brain. I joke around with my mastermind members when we're all together. If you think about the operator manager in any small business, that's typically the one that is the problem. That's why most small businesses fail, because there's not an operator management brain, and then there's no methodology on how to build out the systems. So we just keep doing it, as Gerber says, and it's this insanity. So when you're developing it, which I do, again, like I said, in my mastermind coaching one-on-one stuff, I'm trying to help these folks do what I'm doing, which is develop out the juvenile, even infantile operator manager brain and have it become at least adolescent and then eventually evolve into this mature operating brain. Because if you can do that to yourself, well, then all of a sudden you learn the tools of the trade for management. And mind mapping is one of the best, simplest ones I've ever seen. Just making a simple lesson list of everything, like the what gets done, then the how it gets done, and then the who does it. That's the power of what we do. I mean, really, you want the TRC secret at the highest level? We painstakingly sweat through. It's like gym on Thursdays with me when we do the group call, because we open up these mind maps. We go to whatever section of the business we're talking about, whether it's content and media marketing, whether it's telemarketing, whether it's client care management, past client closing, whatever the module is. And we go, well, what to do? And then we look at how we all as top producers are doing it and figure out what best practices are. What's the most effective, meaning making the client happy? What's the most efficient, meaning quick and dollar-wise? That's the process of becoming more of a mature operator brain. And then lastly, for me, I've done all these things now, post-recession, post-digital, and I've cracked some serious codes. And when I look at my own business, remember, I'm not just a preacher here. I don't just do this podcast as somebody who thinks this might be working this way. I have a real brokerage. I've been a real broker agent since 1999, and I'm very active still in doing all of this. So this Griffin Realty Group model is what we talk about and teach at the Realty classroom. And then I give away the best insights for free here every week. So this isn't made up stuff. This is happening right now as I'm recording this. I just came home from being out of town where I was doing a lot of working on my mindset. And all of a sudden it hits me, the scaler. That guy's a problem. So now I'm looking at another juvenile brain, and I'm going to get into people in a second here, but I'm just looking at myself in the mirror. I know the first thing I'm really good at. I know I'm morphing into a more mature operator, but I'm looking at this infantile scaling brain. Why don't I have more agents? Why don't I have more locations? Why is that even important in the digital age? Well, all of these things came flooding out of me, and I couldn't, I just get the chills thinking about it as you're changing. I'm changing right now as I'm doing this podcast. I'm becoming somebody that recognizes what's infantile in what's necessary. And again, the guy that writes The Nuclear Effect there's a lot of good, smart people like that once they chisel away at something long enough, a lot of them come to a similar conclusion. I can make the case that I'm sure this guy's probably aware of Michael Gerber's work, and Michael Gerber got it from somebody else. You come to these conclusions that this vision, this operation, and somebody has to go do the work. So these three personas bubble up. You can name them different things and pretend it's your idea, but these are universal ideas that when we peel back the onion enough, we get to the bottom of it. But really what I liked about his book is it made me look in the mirror. And here I am, right? I'm not a scaler. So now I have to just simply go in and mind map, well, what does it take to scale? And by the way, in the TRC model, if you download that, freeagentgift.com, you can go there and you can look at expansion module. Expansion equals scaling. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, when I look at expansion module, and I have to grade myself to see, am I juvenile, even infantile, juvenile, adolescent, mature, what am I? As a manager of that module. And what grade do I give myself on a scale of 1 to 10? And at the Realty classroom, the way we grade ourselves is on a scale of 1 to 10 because it really gives clarity. Well, I'd tell you right now, at the moment, I'd probably give myself a 5. Well, that's not good. That's not enough big rocks in that module to grow the business. So while I was away, what did I do? I knew what to do, okay, on how to hire agents, how to get more telemarketers. Those are two things that can help me scale. And me personally, as the broker owner, figuring out what I need to have licenses in other states. What do I have to do, right? What's the reciprocal? Do I have to take classes? Do I have to, there'll be a who, do I have to go get a broker in that state and cut a deal? So all those scaling things started to come into the mind map. That's what to do. Those are all the what to do's. And then how to do it, I start doing it. And then who's going to do it became the issue. So let me go there next, right? Because I've already kind of talked about it. When you look at the next point here, what I said to myself was, we'll start with the plan, okay? So when you start anything, you want to go out there and look, does somebody have a plan? Well, voila, let me raise my hand for you. I can help you with that. If you're starting or restarting, want to restart as a top producer, I've got a free plan for you at freeagentgift.com. Go get it, because that's what I wish somebody had told this creative, because otherwise it's almost like you feel like you have to be the inventor. Okay, you can still be wildly creative on top of my plan. You're in some geography. You have some brand. There's a lot of creative that goes on there. But start with a plan. The next thing was to operate with mind maps, which I've already told you. Don't ever operate your business again without some sort of a checklist that becomes a mind map. Why a mind map? It's like a flow chart. Here's what to do. Then you put a branch out, how to do it. And you can take a guess at how to do it in the beginning. It's really just practical application. Hey, I went out and did this open house this way. It didn't work, so I made some adjustments, so I put my notes in there. Do it this way now. That's your new how. And hey, I don't have enough leverage on all my listings, so I can't go out and do all my open houses. I'll do them from time to time, but the who now becomes my agents. See what I'm saying? That's the mind mapping process that becomes very simple. So operate everything that you do with mind maps. And by the way, a mind map memorializes it. So if you're talking about open houses, if you're talking about listing presentations, onboarding a listing, whatever, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole because I have mind maps for everything now. It is when you go through those, what, how, who. What, how, who, what, how, who, what, how, who, right? And then you scale with those systems. So I don't need to go out and reinvent systems if I want to do this in Colorado, if I want to do this in Florida, which I do, and I'm saying that out loud. because I have to break that scaling juvenile brain to crack it open and be responsible to the world so that I'm pulled forward and then I'm accountable. And if it's not going to be me, I go back as the operator and say, okay, here's how to scale it, but I better get somebody else to pick up the phone and call these agents that are coming in off of these platforms requesting information about why us, right? So let me repeat. Point 2 is start with a plan, operate with mind maps, and scale with systems, right? And people, I should add. Scale with systems and people, but I'll get into that a little bit more. Now, ultimately, the next point is, why don't we do this? And so this is a big point, a topic of conversation when I'm one-on-one with all these folks in the mastermind coaching program. And money's always sort of the white elephant in the room. Even people that have it, that have some money, their money paradigm doesn't allow them to spend it. Or they're more worried, this is the one I see mostly, I'm just worried that I'm not going to have that steady, predictable revenue. See, there's the real issue with business is that we're so out of control and so guessing, or worse, top producers are throwing gobs of money at leads, platforms are just trying to scrape as fast as they can. So my analogy is the alligators are always licking their ankles, ready to swallow them whole, right? So that's the idea here, is that money is always an issue, okay? But when money is an issue, to leverage other natural talent. See, because if I look at this and I say, well, I'm absolutely a starter. Shouldn't I hire an operator? Shouldn't I hire a scaler? Now, that's a loaded question because there are multiple people that run the operation. Eventually, there are multiple people that would be involved in scaling. But let's just, for the sake of argument, imagine ourselves as the issue, because we are. Business is a reflection of who we are and our strengths and our weaknesses, right? So it's really hard to be this tripolar personality that's perfectly balanced, right? So we got an issue. This is why, by the way, this is why small businesses fail. I'm totally convinced. I've spent enough time coaching and teaching it and running it. It's small businesses fail because nobody teaches this well enough. Nobody hammers this through. There should be like a requirement. Oh, you're signing up for a business? Read this. A basic plan on the 3 people that you'll have to be. And when you realize you're not all 3 of them, who you will hire as you make money. Again, you can muscle your way in the beginning and try to play all of them, make a little bit of money and quickly reinvest what you can in hiring these better people to help you. And they can be micro these days. See, I think back in the day, we looked at the money expenditure. Well, Danny, how am I going to afford a general manager? How am I going to afford a recruiter? How am I going to afford a fleet of telemarketers? Well, we don't live in that world anymore. We live in the independent contractor world everywhere now. See, we as real estate agents for a while have been sort of the predominant independent contractor. Now, everybody seems to prefer to work that way if they work for themselves. So you can hire an independent recruiter who works for 4 hours a week for you to scale up. You can hire independents inside your operations if you're trying to operate your social media management plan. You can hire somebody off of Fiverr like I did. She does a phenomenal job from Bangladesh. We communicate via Skype. She's an operator and a born operator and killer at it. I told her what to do and how I was doing it, but said, but I'll listen to how you do it because you're an expert and we'll meld those and we'll see how the consumer reacts. And you're the who. That's exactly what it looks like in the operations for that part. Laura, who's been with me for 15 years, is the operator on the client care stuff, the listing onboarding, the buyer onboarding. She passes it off to Randy, who's the independent contractor at the closing, who's really good at crossing T's and dotting I's, which Laura's not good at. See where I'm going? Just loaded with people who, by the way, can be bought. Their time can be bought. Their specialty can be bought at well less than a full-time employee position. So I have way more people leveraging this process, and it fits into their independent contractor business, and it doesn't cost my business the burden of weighing all in on one generalist. I just said in this podcast, if we can't be a generalist, why are we hiring people that are generalists, right? We need to hire micro natural people under operation, micro natural people under scaling, right? They have a very specific skill. So the last point here is to recognize these personality types as universally necessary. Think about these 3 things and don't avoid dealing with them. So even if you're not a top producer, this is irrelevant. And by the way, that's the big point here at the Realty Classroom. If you find yourself saying, well, I'm not there yet. Well, he coaches top producers. No, I don't. I am at the bottom of the what this business really looks like. Okay. That's what I'm after. Above that, how the business really works. Thank you, Michael Gerber, for that question. Above that is the new agent today, the top producer screwing things up, right? Whatever. We can't avoid the conversation of how a business works. That was the biggest epiphany for me when I actually met Michael Gerber when he was just turned 80 years old. And it was really challenging when I met him because I could feel in him, it was like people just are overlooking the basics and they just don't want to go there, right? We don't know what we don't know. Okay, we can admit that. But do we really keep asking why? Because when you ask enough whys and how the business works and what has to happen, you actually come to a convergence of simplicity. I know you think that the more you might ask why, the more outcomes there are, but that's not the way it works. And I listened to another great book recently too that talked about that. If we keep digging down and down and down, you actually find convergence. So a lot of these whys lead to the same conclusion. And that's what we're saying about these personality types. This is not the first book I have read that talks about this triumvirate at the top of small business. It is the starter, also known in Michael's world as the entrepreneur. It is the operator, also known in Michael's world as the manager. It is the scaler. Now that's a little bit different. That takes a little bit of a turn because that keeps you up in the executive level, whereas there are tons of technicians, right? So you see there's a similarity, but this book opened up for me a whole other persona that I need as an executive. See, the technical work in Michael Gerber's world, he's got sort of this vertical. You go from the scaler, who then talks to the operator, who builds the systems, and the systems manage the technicians who will go out and sell and post and do all those things. But out here somewhere else in the bleachers is the guy that's saying, hey, that's a pretty good system you got there, 1 through 3. How about we scale it? Think about that as the Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc walks in, he takes a look at this whole setup that the McDonald's boys have and said, I am the ultimate scaler. But in fact, since you kind of don't have that mentality, why don't I just write you a check and I'll buy this whole thing from you and off I'll go and scale it. And he became the ultimate scaler, or an example of that. So we're not getting away from this, folks. You have to deal with this, okay? And especially you top producers, you have to understand your problem is your systems, if they're just lead-based, are weak. I've tried to see that model scale itself, this team model where you're just buying leads and you're just throwing them to agents. There's never enough. The top producers start to get overweighted. They leave because they think they're smarter than you. I've seen this movie over and over. So top producers, you got some challenges here. And some challenges. I found out the hard way, and I'm finally starting to get this right. You newbies, the key is to understand your scale is going from the average number of deals, which is a paltry 3. I've seen some typical stat. Typical's not even a stat, okay? I like mean. I like median. I like real old school 5th grade math stuff, right? I want to know what you do so that you can scale it from 3 to 6. That's 100% increase in your revenue. And if you keep, a nice steady a level of average or median sale and your commission rate stays the same, it's also profit scale, right? If you go from 3 to 9, it's a 200% increase. You get the point. So I'm all in on this with you, but you have to understand that that's your scale, right? And that matters to me. So the individual scale of your business is no different from the massive scale that I'm trying to get in mine with other agents. No different. So it's still a subject that you're going to have to look at, and one that you want to look at, because that's what makes you more successful. All right, let me go back and hit these points. Which one of the 3 business personas are you naturally? And it's important to recognize that. Are you a starter, an operator, or a scaler? Second point was, no matter which one you are, you should start with a plan, you should operate with mind maps, and you should scale with systems, right? By the way, for you newer agents or somebody trying to scale from 3 to 6, like my example, that's what I mean by the system for an open house, the system for social. That will help you scale. Next, when money is an issue, to leverage other naturals, in other words, you want to buy the services of operators and scalers, then you can start by adapting your own personality like I have. I have gone first before spending the money on operators to become a better operator. Not too long. I don't dabble there too long. I don't need to become an expert. I hate that advice. Oh, you really have to know how to do this yourself before you can teach someone. No, you don't. You just need to know how it works, right? So what has to happen and how it works, and then you can go hire somebody quickly. And then you can watch them with it. But all the while, if you don't have the money to do it, and by the way, when you don't have the money, think microeconomically. Go to Fiverr.com. Go to Upwork.com, my favorite. Most of my team members have come from Upwork, okay? And scale, once you have those systems, by duplicating them, leveraging them. So for example, if you're really scaling, an open house system, you might have somebody else at the office open up your other listing. Let's say you have 2 listings. You do one, you offer it to another agent, and they're following your same system. Now you're leveraging your exposure, and your sellers are happy, right? And lastly, recognize that these personality types are universal and they're necessary. So they're not going away for any of us. So don't avoid dealing with them. Just think about them. Cheat towards your strength, develop the other one, and then delegate it, okay? Let me summarize it this way. Maybe it'll clarify it. When you're an independent contractor, entrepreneur, me, you must recognize that there are 3 personas that are requirements in the growth and development of your business, whether you're new or you've been in it a long time. So you must recognize what your natural tendency is and confront the others through systems and eventually people if you expect to have a real business that serves you versus a job that you serve. All right, now remember, you can take immediate action to get all this going and get started in the right direction with a free copy of this plan that I have for you. And again, it's there to provoke you into the conversation about what to do. Right? What to do, with or without me. This is what to do. It's sort of it's the culmination of the Michael Gerber pursuit of how does the business work? Well, here's how it works for agents. And here's what to do for any agent. We can't avoid these subjects. You can get it right now at freeagentgift.com. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you might be listening. We also broadcast. We go a little further. We go into how to do it. We give it away. I want you to get a teaser on how to do it because I think maybe I can help you sell something so you have some money to invest in your business. We also broadcast our live sales training calls on Facebook and YouTube every Friday at 1 o'clock EDT. By the way, the past episodes are sitting there if you'd like to go hear me train and coach live. Mostly coach. Training is when I teach them something very specific to do, whether it's the buyer-seller plan on the TRC campfire calls or it's the scripting on the Friday calls that you can hear. But it's more so I like them to bring me their anecdotes. When they practically apply this stuff in the field, you'll hear me help them make adjustments. And by the way, when I'm coaching, I'm not the easiest guy in the world. I am going to go right after the stuff that's not working because I believe that you can affect positive change quickly. So if you want to see what that's really like and you've always been curious and you want to eavesdrop in real coaching, I'm going to repeat live sales training calls on Friday at 1 o'clock on Facebook and YouTube. Just look for the Realty Classroom channel. And if you turn on the notifications, the bells, the whistles, whatever there are these days, you'll get notified on your smartphone. Just turn it on. Just listen. Eavesdrop. We'd also appreciate it, of course, if you would comment on our post, and then I could know what the heck you're thinking. And you know what? I'd be happy to cover some of the topics. I know so many of them are universal, but it's better if you tell me what's going on with you. Hey, thanks for listening. But remember this. Nobody's coming for you. So go get to work on your own business, and I will be in the next episode to help you do just that. All right? Freeagentgift.com. Go get your copy. See you next time.